Hi, Tony Selza here. Welcome to the Experience Economy. I have a good, really interesting guest, and it's way out of the norm of what we usually do here on the Experience Economy. We're going to talk security. Yeah, I know it sounds boring, and I know that's not what we usually go over. We're talking about disruption. We're talking about how technology is taking over. But let me tell you something. There is a huge transformation that's going on in the business climate right now, and that transformation drives from the more that we interface through small screen, through big screen, the more that our customer drives us to use text and email and all these other things to become part of their experience, part of the experience that we design, the more that we get exposed both to our customers and we expose our customers to risk. And the security measures that are coming on board in order to make this happen are 10 to 15 years behind. We're in so much technology debt that the average business doesn't even know where they're at. And it can be big and it can be small. And the small side is, I remember like 15 years ago, I was running a small membership organization, and we used to keep credit cards on file, on paper. I mean, that's really got to scare Jim right now as I say that out loud, right? The hair standing up on the back of his neck. Later, like 5 years later, you find out that Bank One got literally hacked through a headless IoT connected aquarium that was in the lobby, right? So risk is everywhere. It's all the decisions that we make. And that's why we're so lucky to have Jim Goldman with Travis Security, CEO and co-founder, talking about what is changing and how we experience not only the products and services that we consume, but how we experience security in the marketplace. Jim, how is that for an opener?
That's great, Tony. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I get asked, well, what is cybersecurity? And what you have to say is, well, break it apart into its two words, cyber, right? What is cyber? Anything that has a computer chip in it. Your refrigerator, Tony, your stove is part of your cyber network because their Wi-Fi, your Ring doorbell. That's all part of your cyber environment. And each one of those elements is like a node on a network that, if it's not properly secure, it's an unlocked door into your entire environment.
Mm-hmm. And it happens every day. And it happens both on the consumer level and the business level. And we're in constant risk and we don't even know it. This year, I've had my Chase credit cards get compromised. And I turned around, I was $7,500 in, and I realized I had I literally had $400 worth of reoccurring for 6 months that I didn't realize. And I had to go back, and the domino effect of unwinding all that is Amazon, because I started denying these things and asked for money back on some of these things that Amazon believed that I should have paid for. They locked my account for almost 2.5 months, and it was just a domino effect. I got all the money back, but just not being aware and maintaining it created, for me, a consumer, a lot of problem. When that happens to a business, it is literally in jeopardy of not moving on. Is that fair, Jim?
Well, yeah. And I mean, it's a great example because you think about the example you just gave. You had no visibility into the risk you were facing, right? You were blind to the risk you were actually facing. Mm-hmm. Businesses are the same way. They're blind to their current risk, and usually the exact same thing happens to them. Some incident occurs that gets their attention. What they realized is they'd actually been compromised months ago.
Mm-hmm. So talk to me. You were the chief information security officer over at ExactTarget. Obviously, that was a great story and what it did to move into Salesforce. But then you got presented this idea, and what was it? Give us a little bit of the gestation story, how you guys got started.
Sure, but I'd like to actually go back one more step because that's sort of a key piece of the puzzle of why I have the perspective that I have. I actually came to Indiana 32 years ago to take a professorship at Purdue.
Oh, wow.
I started the network engineering degree program. And we pretty quickly started talking about something called network security back then. It wasn't called cybersecurity. And so then I started the cyber forensics program, started doing some early research on reverse engineering malware. Well, the FBI, as it turns out, was trying to build their capability in that area at the same time. They heard about the research I was doing. They came to see me, asked me to get a top secret security clearance, which I did. And I became a task force officer for the FBI Cybercrime Task Force for 5 years, and I
Mhm.
was lead cyber investigator for both criminal and national security cyber squads. That's when I
Wow.
really had my eyes open to the disparity between the level of preparedness of your mid market and small and medium sized business versus your enterprise businesses. So
Well,
then, exactly, the story picks up where you were saying. I went to work for Exact Target. They got acquired by Salesforce, was with Salesforce, one of the world's biggest companies. And I
sure.
saw how, I was part of the Salesforce solution. I built the security governance, risk management, and compliance program for all of Salesforce globally. So I knew how to do this right at a mega scale. The
Sure.
challenge was, how do we bring that back to the small and medium sized businesses that really need it? And
And give
that's
them
this idea of Trava came about.
give them not only the tools, but the best practices and governance around that, and then the services beyond that. Because you guys are, we had this conversation. Your PaaS, not necessarily SaaS, right? But
Right.
you're a platform as a service, and why I think that's so important. I want you to get into that as soon as I get done with this. Is why that's so important is what I call the squirrel factor, right? If you've ever tried to keep a squirrel out of your bird house, right? That squirrel will do whatever it takes, no matter how many things you can put in front of it to get into your birdhouse.
And
Because
clear the screens off your windows. But I'm speaking from firsthand experience. Yeah.
right, because it's motivated by hunger every day to
Right.
get its cheapest meal. And what a lot of people don't know is that hackers are the highest paid role in any technology environment. Now it may be illegally, but that's the way it
Right.
works, right? And
Right.
so when whether you're at a mid market business or an enterprise, the target and the reward just changes in variance. What a lot of mid market businesses don't realize is they're actually better targets because they have the least amount of barrier between them and the win. Right? Am I fair saying that?
Oh, you're exactly right. And I had this epiphany when I worked for the FBI, and that was that cyber criminals are no different than any other type of criminals,
Mm-hmm.
traditional criminals, burglars. They're basically lazy, and they're going to take the path of least resistance. So it's like, if there's a series of storefronts, right, and four of them have their doors thoroughly locked and one doesn't have a door locked, guess
Yep.
which guess which storefront the burglar's going to break into? The
Mm-hmm.
unlocked one. It's the same thing in the cyber world. All
Mm-hmm.
right.
Yep.
You know, which cyber environment is the criminal going to break into? The
Yep.
one with the least locks.
Yes. The one that leave the keys in the car, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the handbag on the front seat.
Yes. Yes. And most small businesses don't know when they're actually leaving that handbag in the front seat, keys in the car, or even the door unlocked. Is that fair?
That's fair, and that's what we call risk. And the,
Yeah.
the problem is they don't understand what they're doing, what they're not doing, and that kind of bottom line of that behavior is, what is their cyber risk profile at any point in time.
And let me tie this back to the experience kind of play, right? So now you're a $30 million HVAC firm who now has to engage through text, who has to engage through email, who has to create an e-commerce play, a mobile app, all these things. You want to have connected devices in homes that tell you when to provide service. All these data points that are helping you deliver a better customer experience are also creating greater risk on a foundation that you never built.
They're,
Is that fair?
they're, that they're introducing new potential vulnerabilities. Every one of those examples in that building block of the network,
Mm-hmm.
you just described in our business are known as attack vectors. Every time you add an attack vector, you basically just left another potentially unlocked door for a cyber criminal.
It's a little it's now that you scared the hell out of me, Jim. What do we do? Like, where's the defense, and how does your products and services help us?
You bet. Well, here's the part that people are missing.
Okay.
It's not that people don't want to secure their environment. It's basically what we find is they don't even know where to start. And unfortunately, people start grabbing for what they read in an airline magazine, what the latest vendor that called on. It's like, buy this, no, buy this, no, buy this other thing. All right. The analogy I always give is this: if the check engine light went on in your car and you pulled into an auto parts store, would you just grab a shopping cart and start going up and down the aisle and throwing random things in the shopping cart? No, you wouldn't. You'd
Hmm.
get a diagnostic, right, that would say, what is really going on? My check engine light, but what's really the problem? Where are my risks? All right. And so, unfortunately, in the cybersecurity realm, in the cyber risk management realm, we don't look at things that way yet. That's the big gap. That's what we're trying to educate people to.
Hmm.
Don't spend any money on any cybersecurity solutions until you know where your gaps are,
Hmm.
because every business is different. All right, maybe you've done some things, maybe you haven't, and so you have to understand that prioritize what we call a risk register. You have to have that prioritized list of risks that you need to mitigate in that order,
Yeah.
and just work your way down. Nobody has enough money to eliminate 100% of risk. That's
It,
why we have insurance, right?
right.
Any
For
kind of
sure.
risk,
Yep.
right? It's the same thing in cyber.
Yeah, and I think the way you described it is also very consistent with what I'm seeing with my customers. It's like they have so many problems they don't know which is the most important problem they need to solve for, right? And we call that problem identification. Really, it's literally, what do we got to get done in the next 90 days, and then what do we got to do in the next 90 days, and then what do we, right? And is it my understanding that you evolve a client through that, or you help them assess
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
benchmark and then move?
This is not a one-time engagement. The old joke occurs to me: how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. All right.
Right.
How do
Hmm.
you build an effective cybersecurity program? One step at a time. All right. But first, you have to have the plan.
And so when somebody was to work at describe the experience of working with you and how that would work for a
You
mid
bet.
market business.
So, as you alluded to before, we have our own platform. We have our own risk and vulnerability assessment and management platform. So what we're trying to avoid, because we're trying to bring the cost down. How do you bring costs down? You automate what you used to have to send a team of consultants in to do. That's
Sure.
what we've done. So
Okay.
we have a very easy to understand, plain English methodology in our platform, so a company can assess its risk profile against a wide variety of frameworks. And I won't go into all the acronyms, but
Sure.
it's like if they're in the healthcare industry, if they're trying to be a Department of Defense contractor, that kind of thing. So
Hmm.
you assess the maturity of your program. What are you doing well? What are you doing not so well? We then do a more technical quantification of their
Sure.
vulnerability. So we do a whole series of scans, and we say, okay, here's the maturity of your program, but here's the really scary stuff.
Yeah.
Here's all your unlocked windows, right? That really needs to be fixed right away. And then the third element, because what we really want is 360 degrees of your risk. But
Hmm.
as the cliche goes, you probably heard it before, your people are your greatest risk. So we
Hmm.
also, on the same platform, have a phishing simulation engine. And so
Yeah.
it's like, how likely are your customers to click on a gift card to Starbucks? We
Yeah.
take those
Well,
three elements, your program maturity, the vulnerabilities that exist, and your people risk. That's your starting point. That's your plan.
yeah, I love that because it's one of the things that we're trying to teach a lot of our B2B partners, a lot of our clients is it's really not about selling anymore. It's really about providing assessing, establishing an expertise, assessing a state, and then prescribing the next step, right?
Exactly.
Because that's really what we want from our doctor. That's
Yes.
what we want from our mechanic, to go back to your
Yes.
original example. And God, Lord, that's what we want from the tech guys that we're supposedly trusting with our environment. And I think what's happened in the business climate, this is why I love what you guys are doing in creating your own experience, kind of tying all this back,
Yes.
it's a trust factor, right?
Absolutely right.
I started in the restaurant business. I got into the tech industry, on accident. I mean, because I saw how hard my tech buddies were working versus me working 70 hours a week running a restaurant. You know what I mean? It's a true story. And I'm like, man, I got to figure this out. And And I just saw this thing that was blatant in the industry 3 decades ago. And I think some of this has come off, but I think your model in security, this is still going on in security. I'm going to use an acronyms you won't understand. I'm going to use language. I'm going to scare the hell out of
Yeah.
you. And I'm
Yeah.
going to make you pay, an egregious amount of money, and you're not going to know what you get out of that, right?
Right.
Where your model is to bring trust into that environment by following that experience of let me show you why we're experts. Let's assess and build trust of your environment. Let's prescribe next steps, and let's get you on a healthcare plan that gets you safe. Is
And it's
that fair?
really yeah, absolutely right. And it's really the last two steps that you talked about are the differentiator. In other words, if you think about it, security scanning tools, risk assessment tools have been around for a long time. But
Sure.
traditionally, what did they do? They
Mhm.
said, you got 1,000 things wrong here. End of story. Good
Yep.
luck. Go do the research. I'm not going to tell you how to fix it, etc. We don't
Mhm.
do that. We say, you got 1,000 things wrong here, but I'm going to prioritize them for you. I'm going to tell you exactly where they are. I'm going to tell you exactly how to fix them. And oh, by the way, we've got real people to talk to that are going to
Sure.
take you along the way.
Well, even Luke Skywalker only fought three guys at a time, right? I mean, he had his lightsaber, but he
Right.
was only fighting three guys at a time. And I think that's part of what these that are the average client's looking for. That's the experience they're looking for. And I commend you on you guys, applying that trust model to the delivery. And I think that's a very, very cool way to disrupt the space. Hey, so you're a founder 2 times. You're down this path. What's the one thing you want to tell anybody else out there that's looking to disrupt a space and create new value for a client? What's the one thing you want them to know?
Well, I mean, I usually say it's the three P's. You have to have a problem, an interesting problem that really needs to be solved, right?
Sure. Yep.
Uh, Two, you have to have passion about it. Like,
Yep.
in other words, you have to have the attitude that I really can't believe I'm getting paid to do this because
Right.
you love it so much. And then the third piece is people. You can't do it yourself, so you have to have people that are equally passionate about the problem you're trying to solve.
Amen. Amen. Hey, man, thanks so much for being on the Experience Economy. It was great having you.
My